Chapter 12 The Attack by Fire. The Reverend Mr. Ware found Lusik's Gorange law office effectively sufficient, however its owner became no longer in. He likely might be again, even though, in a quarter of an hour or so, the boy stated, and the minister straightaway decided to wait. Theron became interested by locating that this workplace boy changed into no aside from Harvey, the lad who brought milk to the parsonage every morning. He remembered now that he had heard true things of this urchin, as to the hard work he did to assist his mom, the widow Semple, in her battle to preserve a roof over her head, and additionally terrible things, in that he did now not come often both to church or Sunday college. The clergyman recalled, too, that Harvey had impressed him as a man or woman. "Nicely, sonny, are you going to be a lawyer?" he asked, as he seated himself by the window, and regarded approximately him, first at the dusty clutter of vintage papers, pamphlets, and tape-certain documents in bundles which crowded the stuffy chamber, and then on the boy himself. Harvey was busy at a huge field, a difficult pine dry items container which bore the flaring label of an specific business enterprise, and also of a seed company in a western metropolis, and which the boy had reputedly just opened. He was lifting from it, and putting on the table after he had shaken off the sawdust and moss wherein they were packed, small parcels of what looked inside the fading light to be half-dried plant life. "Properly, I don't know, I alternatively wager no longer," he made answer, as he pursued his mission. "To this point as I can make out, this would not be the vicinity to start in at, if I was going to be a lawyer. A boy can analyze right here how to load cartridges and easy a gun, and braid trout flies directly to leaders, but I do not see plenty law laying round unfastened. Anyway," he went on, "I could not have enough money to read law, and now not be getting any wages. I ought to earn cash, you know." Theron felt that he preferred the boy. "Sure," he said, with a kindly tone, "I have heard that you are a good, industrious teen. I dare say Mr. Gorange will see to it that you get a threat to examine law, and get wages too." "Oh, I'm able to examine all there's right here and welcome," the boy explained, stepping in the direction of the window to decipher the label on a bundle of roots in his hand. "However, it truly is no right unless there may be everyday practice getting into the workplace all of the even as. It is the way you learn how to be a attorney. However, Gorange don't have what I name a exercise at all. He simply sees men inside the other room there, with the door close, and anything there may be to do he does all of it himself." The minister remembered a stray trace somewhere that Mr. Gorange was a money-lender, what became colloquially referred to as a be-aware shaver. To his rustic sense, there was something not pretty nice approximately that career. It'd be indecorous, he felt, to inspire further communicate about it from the boy. "What are you doing there?" he inquired, to change the difficulty. "Sorting out some flora," answered Harvey. "I don't know what has got into Gorange lately. This is the 0.33 huge box," he said, "considering the fact that I've been here, this is, in 6 weeks, besides baskets complete of rose trees. I don't know what he does with them. He carries them off himself someplace. I've had form of 1/2 a perception that he's figurin' on getting married. I cannot think of whatever else that could make a person spend money like water, just for plants and timber. They do get silly, you understand, whilst they've got marriage at the mind." Theron observed himself only imperfectly following the theories of the younger logician. It changed into his truth that monopolized the minister's interest, but as I understand it, he remarked hesitatingly, Brother Gorange, or instead Mr. Gorange, receives all of the flora he needs, everything he likes, from a massive garden someplace outside. I don't know that it's far exactly his, however, I remember hearing something to that impact. The boy slapped the ultimate litter off his arms, and, as he got here to the window, shook his head. "Those don't come from no garden out of doors," he declared. "They arrive from the dealers, and he pays stable coins for 'em. The bill for this lot by myself become 31 greenbacks and 60 cents. There it's far at the table. You can see it for yourself." Mr. Ware did not offer to appearance. "Very in all likelihood those are for the garden I used to be talking of," he said. "Of root you cannot cross on taking plant life out of a garden indefinitely without placing others in. I do not know something approximately any garden that he is taking flowers out of, answered Harvey, and appeared meditatively for a minute or two out upon the road under. Then he turned to the minister. Your wife's doing a bargain of gardening this spring, I be aware, he said casually. You would hardly ever suppose it become the identical area, she's fixed it up so. If she wishes any extra hoeing done, I can always get off Saturday afternoons. I will recall, said Theron. He also seemed out of the window, and nothing greater changed into said until, some moments later, Mr. Gorringe himself came in. The attorney regarded each surprised and pleased at discovering the identity of his tourist, with whom he shook arms in almost an extra of cordiality. He spread a huge newspaper over the pile of seedling flowers on the desk, pushed the packing field underneath the table along with his foot, and stated almost peremptorily to the boy, "You may pass now." Then he became once more to Theron. "Nicely, Mr. Ware, I am glad to see you," he repeated, and drew up a chair by the window. "Matters are going all right with you, I'm hoping." Theron mentioned again the waving black hair, the darkish skin, and the carefully trimmed mustache and chin tuft which gave the attorney's face a blended impact of romance and smartness. No, it changed into the eyes, cool, smart, darkish gray eyes, which cautioned this latter quality. The recollection of having visible one among them wink, in deliberate hostility of sarcasm, while those other trustees had their backs screwed to become, got here mercifully in the intervening time to recollect the young minister to his errand. "I concept I'd drop in and feature a chat with you," he said, getting higher below way as he went on. "Quarterly convention is only a fortnight off, and I'm a bargain at sea about what's going to take place." "I'm not a church member, you recognize," interposed Gorringe. "That shuts me out of the quarterly convention." "Unfortunately, yes," said Theron. "I wish it didn't. I'm afraid I am no longer going to have any pals to spare there." "What are you fearful of?" asked the lawyer, seeming now to be absolutely at his ease again. "They can't devour you." "No, they maintain me too lean for that," replied Theron, with a pensive smile. "I was going to invite, you realize, for an boom of income or an additional allowance. I do not see how I can cross on as it is. The sum constant with the aid of the final quarterly conference of the old 12 months, and which I get now, is $100, much less than my predecessor had. That isn't always honest, and it isn't always right. However, up to now, from it's looking as if I may want to get in boom, the possibility seems as an alternative that they'll make me pay for the gas and that sidewalk. I in no way recovered extra than about half of my moving expenses, as you realize, and, frankly, I do not know which manner to turn. It maintains me depressing all of the even as." "This is wherein you're incorrect," said Mr. Gorringe. "In case you let such things as that fear you, you will hold a sore pores and skin all your life. You're taking my advice, and just move beforehand your very own gait, and allow other parents do the traumatic. They're quite close-fisted here, for a fact, but you could control to rub along by hook or by crook. If you must get into any actual difficulties, why, I wager," the lawyer paused to smile in a hesitating, significant way, "I wager some avenue out can be observed all right. The main issue is, do not fret, and do not allow your wife to fret either." He stopped abruptly. Theron nodded in recognition of his amiable tone, and located the nod lengthening itself out into nearly a bow as the idea spread through his thoughts that this were not anything more nor much less than a promise to help him with money if worst came to worst. He looked at Levi Gorringe, and said to himself that the instinct of ladies changed into tremendous. Alice had picked him out as a friend of theirs merely by seeing him bypass the house. "Yes," he said, "I'm specifically hectic to preserve my spouse from demanding." She changed into surrounded in her girlhood with the aid of a bargain of what, pretty, we have to name luxury, and that makes it all of the more difficult for her to be a negative minister's wife. I had quite decided to get her employed female, come what may, but she thinks she'd alternatively get on without one. Her health is higher, I have to admit, than it became whilst we came here. She works out in her garden an exceptional deal, and that seems to trust her. Octavius is a healthful vicinity, this is typically admitted, spoke back the attorney, with indifference. He appeared now not to be inquisitive about Mrs. Ware's fitness, but looked intently out via the window at the buildings opposite, and drummed with his fingers on the arms of his chair. Theron made haste to revert to his errand. "Of root, your now not being within the quarterly conference," he stated, "renders positive things not possible. However, I didn't recognize, but you would possibly have some expertise of the way subjects are going. What plans the officers of the church had, they appear to have agreed to tell me not anything." "Well, I've heard this an awful lot," replied Gorringe. "They're figuring on getting the Soulsbys right here to raise the debt and shake matters up commonly. I guess that's approximately as good as settled." "Hadn't you heard of it?" "Now not a breath," exclaimed Theron, mournfully. "Well," he introduced upon mirrored image, "I'm sorry, downright sorry. The debt raiser appears to me about the lowest down thing we produce. I have heard of these Soulsbys. I suppose I noticed him indeed as soon as at convention, but I agree with SHE is the head of the company." "Yes, she wears the breeches, I recognize," stated Gorringe sententiously. "I was hoping," the younger minister started with a rueful sigh, "in truth, I felt quite assured on the outset that I ought to repay this debt, and put the church normally on a brand new footing, by means of giving greater attention to my pulpit paintings. It's miles infrequently for me to say it, but in different locations where I have been, my preaching has been instead a characteristic in the metropolis itself. I have continually been acquainted with entice to our services an awesome many non-individuals, and that, as you recognize, helps fantastically from a cash factor of view. However, somehow that has failed here. I doubt if the average congregations are a whit larger now than they had been when I came in April. I realize the collections aren't." "No," commented the lawyer, slowly, "you may in no way do whatever in that line in Octavius. You might, of root, if you had been to live here and work hard at it for 5 or 6 years. "Heaven forbid," groaned Mr. Ware. "Quite so, positioned in the other. The point is that the Methodists here are a little set by themselves. I don't know that they prefer one another in particular, but I do recognize that they're not what you might name popular with people out of doors. Now, a brand new preacher at the Presbyterian Church, or even the Baptist, he might have a danger to create speak, and make a stir. However, Methodist, no. Folks that do not belong won't come near the Methodist Church right here as long as there may be every other vicinity with a roof on it to go to. Deliver a dog a bad name, you know. Well, the Methodists here have got a bad name, and if you may preach like Henry Ward Beecher himself you wouldn't change it, or get folks to come and listen you." "I see what you mean," Theron answered. "I'm no longer especially amazed myself that Octavius would not love us, or look to us for intellectual stimulation. I myself depart that pulpit more regularly than otherwise, feeling like a moist rag, entirely limp and discouraged. However, if you do not thoughts my speaking of it, you do not belong, and yet you return." It became evident that the attorney did now not mind. He spoke freely in response. "Oh, sure, I've got into the addiction of it. I began going when I first got here, and so it became natural for me to move. Then, of Path, being the best lawyer you have got, a considerable amount of my business is blended up in one matter or some other along with your club. You spot those are simply the matters which settle a man in a rut, and hold him there." "I suppose your people were Methodists," said Theron, to fill within the pause, "and that is how you initially started out with us." Levi Gorringe shook his head. He leaned, returned, half closed his eyes, put his finger pointers collectively, and nearly smiled as though something on reflection pleased and moved him. "No," he stated, "I went to the church first to peer a girl who used to head there. It became lengthy before a while. All her circle of relatives moved away years ago. You wouldn't recognize any of them. I used to be more youthful then, and I didn't know as tons as I do now. I worshipped the very floor that woman walked on, and like a fool I by no means gave her a lot as a touch of it. Searching back now, I'm able to see that I'd have had her if I might requested her. However, I went as an alternative and sat round and looked at her at church and Sunday school and prayer conferences Thursday nights, and sophistication conferences after the sermon. She became devoted to religion and church paintings, and, thinking it would please her, I joined the church on probation. Guys can fool themselves simpler than they could other people. I honestly believed on the time that I had skilled faith. I felt myself complete of all kinds of awakenings of the soul and so forth. However, it was definitely that female. You spot I'm telling you the thing just as it became. I used to be very satisfied. I suppose it changed into the happiest time of my existence. I take into account there has been a love ceremonial dinner at the same time as I used to be on probation, and that I sat down in front, proper beside her, and we ate the little square chunks of bread and drank the water collectively, and I held one nook of her hymn book when we stood up and sang. That changed into the nearest I ever got to her, or to complete membership within the church. That very next week, I suppose it became, we learned that she had got engaged to the minister's son, a young guy who had simply ended up a minister himself. They were given married, and went away, and in some way I never took up my club when the 6 months probation became over. That's how it turned into. It's miles very interesting, remarked Theron, softly, after a little silence, and really full of human nature. Properly, now you spot, said the lawyer, what I suggest after I say that there hasn't been any other minister here because, that I should have felt like telling this story to. They would not have understood it in any respect. They might have idea it become blasphemy for me to say directly out that what I took for experiencing faith was sincerely a woman. But you are exceptional. I felt that immediately, the first time I saw you. In a pulpit or out of it, what I like in a man or woman is that he ought to be human. It pleases me beyond measure, which you ought to like me. Then, returned the young minister, with frank gratification shining on his face. The sector is made all the sweeter and greater lovely by way of those factors of romance. I am not one in all individuals who would wish to peer them banished or frowned upon. I do not mind admitting to you that there is a great deal in Methodism. I suggest the stern exercise of its letter that you find right here in Octavius. This is personally distasteful to me. I read the opposite day of an English bishop who stated boldly, publicly, that no cutting-edge country should education the ideas laid down within the Sermon at the Mount and live to tell the tale for 20-4 hours. Ha, ha. That is suitable, laughed the lawyer. I felt that it become excellent, too, pursued Theron. I get to look at exceptional many stuff otherwise, right here in Octavius. Our Methodist discipline is just like the Beatitudes, very helpful and beautiful, if dealt with as religious concept, however more or much less of a stumbling block if insisted upon literally. I declare, he added, sitting up in his chair, I in no way talked like this to a residing soul, before in all my life. Your confidences were contagious. The Reverend Mr. Ware rose as he spoke, and took up his hat. Have to you be going? Requested the attorney, additionally rising. Well, I am happy I haven't bowled over you. Are available in oftener whilst you are passing. And in case you see something I allow you to in, continually tell me. The two guys shook hands, with an emphatic and lingering clasp. I am happy, stated Theron, that you didn't forestall coming to church simply due to the fact you lost the female. Levi Gorringe spoke back the minister's pleasantry with a smile which curled his mustache upward, and extended in little wrinkles on the ends of his eyes. No, he said jestingly. I'm demise on accumulating debts, and that I reckon that the church still owes me a female. I'll have one but. So, with merriment the echoes of which pleasantly observed Theron down the stairway, the two guys parted.